What's good, everyone? Today we're going to start looking at my composition for Doom Eternal. We're going to go through my workflow, my different plugins I use, some ideas that I have, and how I came to put the music to the trailer. We're also going to look at different forms of sampling, what you can do with samples, just different production ideas really. Get some new ideas for yourself. When starting this project, I first found these loops from Heaviosity. Heaviosity is a really good sample instrument, film scoring, different instrument plugin. And one of their main ones is called Damage, which is basically a percussion instrument tool. I don't own Damage, but I found these free sounds you can get from their website. A real brutal percussion. I normally don't like to use samples. I like to make everything from scratch myself, but sometimes, you just got to get a good sound from the source, and at the end of the day it's more what your originality is what you do with these samples and with these instruments than always worrying about, I don't want to use these presets, I don't want to use samples, I don't want to use loops because it's not creative. I think there's always an argument for that, but I feel like it's what you do to the samples at the end of the day and what you do think to, these loops or different presets with your music. It's not necessarily a fact that you've got a loop or a sound and you can't use it because it's cheating. In some cases, if you put blocks of things together, then yeah, that's just not really making music. But it's the creativity and originality that you put into these samples that makes things unique in your own. So we're going to look at all the samples together that I got from this pack, and these are the only samples that I've used that I haven't made, but then I've changed. So let's listen to these. So these just sound sick. There's a lot of mystery and dark tones to these different percussion sounds, which would take me ages just to make by myself. And you're probably thinking, oh, you're a percussionist, Harry. Why haven't you just played your own? Well, for this purpose in particular, I just like these sounds, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to use these. Sometimes, it just gave me fresh ideas, which is the point of all of this. It's all about coming up with your own ideas and seeing what you can do with these samples. So the first project that we're looking at here is I'm very messy with all my projects. I like to put everything in, then all the things I don't use I mute, get rid of it and start a brand new project, calling it a cleaner project or whatever, which we're going to look at in a second. But let's look at the next instrument I've used, which is the bass, which is from a plugin called Bass Synth, which is here. I'm going to take off all the other plugins I've used and just show you what it sounds like just with the plugin itself. So it sounds quite demonic and quite alien sounding. I just found this sound through the presets in Bass Synth and moved about the Y and X axis to get to this point. And then I added plugin called Shaperbox, which is by Cable Guys. It's a really good tool, mainly for EDM, but I use it for different ideas. What I've got is this drive distortion plugin, where, as you can see from these waves here, this is where the distortion kicks in and works. So if we follow the audio and listen to it, here you can hear it gets distorted, so it almost has like more of a growl or more of a darkness and like an animal sound to it, really, which I really like, which goes well with bass specifically. I think this plugin is mainly used for bass, for like distorted bass lines, so it's not just constantly distorted, you just get more interesting waves and different things. So that's that. Next is basically a low-end sub-bass I've used, which is also Bass Synth. It's an 808 more. It's more of an 808, but I haven't used like the punchy part of the 808 bass. I've just got the sub bass part of it, which is it's great for just a lower layer in the mix. And I don't think I did anything else to this. It's just straight. Oh no, I did, but I'll show you that in my later project. But this is the bare bones sound of it, just a low sub bass, and that goes throughout the whole track. It just helps adds to the feel of like unease to it. I think we'll go into. Oh no! Before we go into the next project, or the cleaner session, we're going to look at my vocal, which is here for the part where you see the main character, which is Doomslayer. I added my own voice to that part, which is this. And what I did was, I just used the mic from my laptop. I normally set it up through my audio interface, you know, with a proper mic and everything. But I saw Nick Mira in one of his beat making videos just use his phone microphone to record some guitar loops, and it sounded great. You know, I mean, for this, I wouldn't do that for full-on recordings of vocals or, you know, full-on recording sessions. But I wanted more distorted, gritty sound, so for that it worked quite well. So I'm going to take off all the plugins I've used for my voice. I'm just going to hear the voice just dry and what I did. So here it is here.
Doomslayer.
I sort of like whispered to the mic, so like an ASMR sound. But then adding EQ,
Doomslayer,
a little bit of a lower voice, add to my voice to make it a little bit more seductive. Then I added Vocal Doubler, which is a great free plugin by Isotope, which obviously doubles your vocals. Funny that.
Doomslayer.
And it also had like a high with the effect, like just like a bit of glitter, or I don't know what you call it, sort of shimmer to my voice.
Doomslayer.
In the very high range. And how I mainly got this sound was through Vocal Synth, which is probably the best vocoder you can get. I just love vocoders. I think they're great tools. You know, Kanye West uses them a lot in 808s and Heartbreaks, Daft Punk and everything. I've just grown to love the sound of a vocoder and what it can do. So I wanted a good one, so I got the best. So this one, I used a plugin in a monstrous setting called Distort Mod, and it ended up something like this. And it also added a randomness to it, where when you play it, it sounded different each time. I think it's got I don't know where the randomness setting is. But I haven't really used this a lot. I don't do a lot of vocal stuff. I mean, I'm getting more into it, but it's not something I do a lot of. So I had to record one part. So I did several recordings of that until I found which I like. And actually, the first one I got was pretty decent, and that's what I used on the main recording. And and it has a real. It's almost like a reverb delay to it, but like choppy samples at the end, which I really liked, and ended up using that. And I don't. No. And the last thing I did was in the final recording, which I then, after using the effects, I then re-sampled, and then I got this. Which. Where's the plugin? Here it is. So, it's at the beginning. So the last thing I added to my voice was which is a great plugin recommended to me by a friend called Little Altar Boy. He found this when looking at a Russ video that Russ used on his voice in the track interlude on Shake the Snow Globe. Which is a great track, and I love just the character it gives to your voice and the possibilities it does pitch-wise and everything. So yeah, what I did with this is I pitched it down, used the format and drive to give it a bit more grittiness, and I ended up with this. And re-sampled that again just to not use a lot of CPU power. But that's what I did for the voice for that part, and later I'll show you what I did further on. So I'll open my cleaner project. I think I'll just show you my cleaner project and then my final mix project, because I've got about 4 or 5 different projects. So this project I've called Even Cleaner, So I've got a cleaner project, and I've got an even cleaner project with all my plugins and everything, just to not overpower my CPU. And not that I've really had Ableton crash, but I don't want to get to the point of where it'll make my computer crash. Also, I forgot to mention, when composing for videos or sound design, Foley design, I like to use two monitors. On my main monitor I use the Ableton project or whatever DAW you'd use. On my other monitor I've got my clip, which you can see there. And that just helps free space, so you can focus on the whole project of having, because I used to just use it on my laptop, have the clip and the project on the same screen, which is very annoying, and to constantly go through and close the project. So if you're getting into film and game scoring, composition, sound design, whatever, I'd recommend two monitors for that purpose. Right, so now we're on the cleaner project, so let's look at what I've done with the percussion. So now let's look at the intro first of all. So let's just go to the intro. So before kicking into the main bit of where all the action happens, I've got this intro happening, which has the bass that I made, has the percussion, has my voice, and I've also chopped up, as you can see here, the percussion. And I'll show you the automation I did as well on the bass to make it like to go from low to high. So I did chords on the bass part and then just raised the octaves higher and higher and higher till it's almost like excruciating, but because it's so short it doesn't matter. I initially just had this build up, but it sounded a bit thin and like it just didn't sound right, so I added this part to it. It's the percussion, but then I've just chopped it up and used the main hits and build-ups and drops and everything. For this is where the sound design part cuts into it. It's mainly just a composition game score for this trailer, but I wanted to have some sound design ideas. So the first one is this, where it's the hit, bomb, bomb. My idea for that was like, as you can see with the clip, was like almost like the devil or a monster hitting a massive gate, and like because of knocking the door creates this massive boom sound. So I wanted as if like the devil or something was coming through, and that's why Doomslayer looks behind him about to fight the devil. So that's why I got into that transition part. I did have my voice went on the part where he looks around and then I say Doomslayer, but I did it from this transition, so it's almost as if the devil's calling him and then knocking the door for him to then turn around and fight him. So that is this. And then the build up into the next section. That's mainly it for that. Also for the percussion, what I did was I got like this longer hit and then reversed it to so like going out and into the next transition, which is this, and then it hits even harder for the next point. I also did that with my voice. I did the exact same thing and reversed it, and then it hits even harder with the build up. We'll now look into the drums actually, because that's the next thing that we hear. With the drums, I just wrote the notes in. I use just an Ableton drum kit. I got it because of having Ableton Suite. You can get a pack which is this dry session. This drum, it's called Ambient Loud Punch. It's a pack from Session Drum Studio, and that was like the hardest hitting I could find through the pack. And then I just wrote the notes in, so I'll consolidate the whole thing. No, actually, I'll do the 4 bars, consolidate it, or join it, whatever. And you can see what I've done. So, being a drummer, I understand what works, what what needs to be done with MIDI. So I think this is where your own instrument comes in really handy into production, where you understand it a lot further, where you know what patterns are to be used for certain things and what works. So for the drums, I just did a lot of heavy double kicks, crashes, and that's just this. I'll solo it, which is this. So I had like off and on beats just to make it a little bit more interesting with the splashes and that of the ride cymbal. But I sort of like air drummed it out in my head of how it would work, and then put it together. The beginning of the bar is hitting like 2 crashes at the same time in this, and then getting into the beat. Because I changed my voice being the intro of where you see Doomslayer turn around, I instead put that earlier and put the drums like a fill to build it, to bring the excitement into the main beat. So that is just this just going around the toms, being this. And that just, you know, it's just a good transition between that and getting into the beat. That's mainly it for the drums. I add a bit of EQ, limiter, and reverb. A compression I do as well on the MIDI. I like to bounce things out pretty quickly just to work with the audio than working with MIDI. I feel like you just get a better result or working with audio and a nicer result. So next, let's look at what I did with the guitar. Because I'm not really an electric guitarist, I'm more of a classical guitarist. So yeah, for the guitars, this is not a lot of chordal progression. I did that on purpose because I didn't want it to be like very strict. You know, you've got to do D minor to E minor to, you know, that sort of thing. I played, the main notes I play are in D. For the bass, it's all D the whole way through. And for the guitar, I just play not power chords, but I'll play it actually 1 second. So with my shitty Harley Benton Floyd Rose on it, the tuning goes really easily, so I wasn't really too bothered about using the whole thing because I knew every string, because I knew that it was going to go out of tune. So I just tuned it to drop D, so it's D, A, D, and just played like bar chords but just with 1 finger, and palm muted it to be quite genty. I even made my own pick, but I don't know where it's gone. Get down picking on D in drop D with palm mutes. And I just reamped that through Ableton as I don't have a guitar amp on me. And I'll show you what I did with that. So the original guitar is not there. It was in my older project. All I did with the guitar is reamp it, use a pedal in Ableton. I used a bit of saturation on it, EQ, limiter, compression, and I think a bit of reverb, and I basically doubled it, so one's playing a higher octave and one's playing a lower octave, and they're panned on different sides. So basically this is what the guitars are. Which isn't great, but not being a guitarist, it's alright. For this job I thought it was okay. You know, I'm sure a lot of guitarists are like, oh, you should be reamping all this, it's fine. I'll now show you my mixing stage project so we can look at what I've done with the final parts and what I do with that. So this one is called Doom Eternal Remake Mixing Stage Project. So the intro is this. All together. So what I've done here, I really thought I needed like a dark sounding choir, and I found this sample from Black Octopus, which I had bought a while back, and I found this perfect sample being. And what I've done is panned it left to right using Pancake by Cable Guys, which is a great, useful plugin for things like this. And it's easier just to go to give a more interesting experience in the headphones. Bit of reverb on that as well. But what I've done is it's almost like a DJ technique where when you go from one song to another in a gig, you need to do transitions between the end of one song and the beginning of another. So that's almost like hinting that it's about to change, and it's not, if you hear something that's not from the first song that you're listening to going into the next, it sort of hints that it's changing. So that's why it went from the full-on drums and guitar to just the choir, strings, brass, and slowly losing the percussion to just real dark and low, empty sounding, I suppose. So this is a transition here. So you hear it going, the choir entering to then finish with that. And for a bit more of sound design, I followed the axe of the, I don't know what it is, from the bad guy basically, and what I did for that was just use analog from Ableton, just use white noise, EQ, bit of reverb. What it sounds like, and it just follows the axe. And when the doom sign comes in, I added a gong. Just to introduce that sign, and at the end I was going to do a full-on orchestra, but I thought it doesn't really need it. I used brass and strings in the end from library by Orchestral Tools, which is also free, called Layers, and they have this one which is not showing. Here it is. So it's chords minor sustain in this plugin, and that's playing this. So it's very uneasy. I originally did like a drone part, so it's going from one note to the octave to the perfect fifth, and that's great. It's a drone effect, but that made it almost sounds quite uplifting and hopeful, which is not appropriate for this at all. So I think I did minus seconds. Yeah, I just did minus seconds. So it creates a real uneasy sound. So the end sounding like this, going from the D to the octave to the minor second, and it ends it uneasy because it almost wants to make it uncomfortable and dark sounding. And finally, with the vocals, I did this interesting thing, which is when I used the reversed vocal I did earlier, and it almost sounds like it's not Latin, but it sounds like a Latin effect. So like when you see the demon you're fighting, it's almost like it's talking, or you're hearing the demon in the background talking to you, sort of thing, which I thought was quite appropriate. And I also put that into simpler and use my keyboard, because in simpler, when you put just one sample in and you play it higher or lower, it will go faster and higher or lower and slower, depending on what the sample is. And it's descending into darkness, sort of thing. So same with the strings and brass. Even though it's playing more notes, it sounds very dark and uneasy, and that's what I was going for with this. And that's really it. And the only other thing I did was use, for the bass, which I've just remembered. So for the bass, I added this plugin by Waves called Renaissance Bass. I saw Focus use it in a beat making tutorial, and it's a great effect on for bass, funny enough. It just adds a bit more character and a bit more low end, which isn't great for 808s really, because you want it to be punchy and to the point, but this adds a nice low end to pluck basses or double basses or sub basses in this case, and by turning the intensity up it created like a natural distortion, or if I take it off even there, but adding it as a nice, just like a without putting distortion on, that's made it distorted, and that's throughout the whole piece, and that's another thing I quite liked. And yeah, that's really it. I mean, I could go further into everything else, but I think this video is going to be long enough anyway. But yeah, if you have any questions or if you want to know anything else for production tips or anything, let me know. I'm going to make some more videos going through beats and how I make compositions and approach game scores and film scores and whatnot. But yeah, cheers guys. Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well in these times, and I'll see you soon.